All right, we are now live.
Thank you.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. This is the Finance and Audit Committee for November 14th. It is 11 a.m. Teresa, will you call roll?
Yes. Okay. Gordon.
Here.
Dr. Pandolfi.
Here.
Michelle. Ron.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Teresa, Michelle is joining right now.
Okay. There's Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Thank you. We just started. That was a roll call. So thank you for joining us.
All right, you have the agenda. Unless there are changes, I'd ask for a motion in a second.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to see if we could amend the agenda to have Brent introduce from Jackson County our new new trustee.
Maybe we'd have that right after the consent agenda. We don't have a consent
We
for the
just
minutes.
have minutes. I'm going to do it after the minutes.
Okay.
Any other changes? Any motion
So
to for the agenda, the amended agenda? Sorry.
so moved.
Do
Yeah,
I
but-
need to second? I'm sorry, I don't know who all's here.
Okay, in the room, Michelle, we have Gordon from the committee. We have Gordon and Ron. Online is yourself and Dr. Pandolfi. We also have in attendance our newest board member, Mr. Bob Johnson or Robert Johnson? Bob Johnson and Brent Schondemeyer.
Okay. I can second that.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor? Aye.
All right.
Yumi, is that an aye? Opposed?
Yes, that was an aye for me.
Okay, so that's fine, 4-0. Okay, the minutes were online. Comments, changes, corrections. I did have one on Teresa. On number 9, the 6th paragraph says in the second line says Microsoft Azure, and that should be Azure, A-Z-U-R-E.
AZURE. Okay,
Yes.
we'll fix that.
For no other changes, make that motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second,
I can second, Yummy.
Second. Sorry, can't get to my.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
I don't ask anybody else. Okay, Brent. Floor is yours.
It's my great pleasure to introduce you to, I actually know him as Robert Thane Johnson, but he obviously prefers to be called Bob. My best understanding is people introduce themselves better than you do yourselves. So I'm going to defer to Bob and have him make some comments. So I will do this at the board meeting tomorrow night, and Bob will be here tomorrow night. So Bob is replacing John Laney, who was on an unexpired term, and the county executive through an executive order appointed Bob to take John Laney's place and maybe share tomorrow. And doing that, I was also reappointed to a term that goes to 2026. So if you have I thought, oh my gosh. Anyway, but if I, ask Bob maybe to make a comment or two. Bob's been known to me for a long, long time. And if you lived in Jackson County, and I hope that you'll take the chance to listen to him. And so Bob, it's yours.
Well, thank you, Brent. Yes, I certainly do want to meet the rest of the board in person, but I have been involved. I've been elected to other offices in Jackson County and in the state legislature, and was involved in the Prop L campaign of 2016 in terms of the library. I also built houses for a long time. I was a small builder. I'll make my editorial comment. You ought to build your houses with smaller builders and not the national builders, but that's an editorial comment. Pay attention to it. But so I'm kind of in a retired position now, except I am heavily involved in girls softball. I'm president of the Lee Summit Girls Softball Association, and like 17 years worth involved. My granddaughter plays competitive softball. Anyway, we'll talk in person again tomorrow. But I am very appreciative of the county executive for making this appointment from my perspective to the Mid-Continent Library Board. And it's an organization that I've certainly followed over the years, and our family has used the services. And glad to be a part of the board. I appreciate the county executive for making this appointment.
Welcome.
One other re-comment, Bob and John were at the Green Valley groundbreaking on Friday, and I use it as an opportunity to thank John for his service on the library board, and probably tomorrow I'll make short but similar comment. So.
Yeah, I might also mention that Bob expressed his willingness to serve on this committee, and he was so appointed. Thank you.
Welcome. All right. We move forward. Monthly financials.
I'm sorry, I've got a question, just for clarity. So Mr. Johnson is going to be on this committee. Is he on there effective right now, today? Okay, so as of voting.
Oh, okay. So do I need to redo the vote? No, that was
No,
after
we're
minutes
okay.
were before. Never
It was
mind.
just minutes and agenda.
Okay.
You're okay.
All right. Monthly financials, Quan.
Okay, that's the report for the month of October, and it shows the current monthly spending revenue year to date, and comparison to the budget. The budget is the new budget just approved months ago.
Cody, can you blow that up just a little bit?
Oh, Michelle has her hand raised
Oh.
too, apparently. We can't, thank you, Cody, because we can't see that.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you. Did you have something?
I just have a question after Kwan's done.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Okay, the tax revenue, what we have received so far is the delinquent tax revenue. The new tax revenue will start to come this Friday from all three counties. On the expenditure side, everything is spent according to the budget. No surprise here. That's a quick summary of the monthly financial.
I would just point out that one of the things we had to worry about when we talked about October, I think, was the drawdown. And you'll see that we're at about 17.5 year to date. Last year was 17.1. So our next month will be peak in the drawdown, whatever that number turns out to be. So anyway, so the good news is we're slightly above last year. We're below at least how Quan spread the budget. That I'm not sure I know the details of the spread on everything there, but at least we're below budget on that. So go ahead, Quan. Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Anything else you want to cover?
No, not on monthly financial.
Okay, all right. Any questions from anyone? Jill, Yummy? Okay, you also had the disbursements detail, I'll click through to that.
That's an attachment in
Okay.
Word docs.
All right, if you have questions on that, that's That will also be on the consent agenda tomorrow night, correct? So it does list everything in, I believe, alphabetical order. So if there are questions on specific disbursements, please raise those or be ready for the discussion.
Yeah, and that report, the new report shows all payments, not just a aggregated total by vendor in the past.
Okay. I think the next item is the personnel schedules. Jennifer here?
She's online.
Oh, she is. All right. Cody, can you pull that up? And can you blow it up a little bit more? There we go. Thank you. Jennifer, I asked, we had talked about this, trying to get a little better understanding of where staff resources are deployed. I gave her kind of a prototype layout. Jennifer took the ball and ran with it. This is her schedule. There may be other information that's relevant that we'll get to, but this was kind of to just start discussion and give the board idea where the bodies are and where they're deployed. Jennifer, do you want to go ahead and give us an overview here?
Sure. We were trying to group together the departments into what type of support that they offer or they provide for the library. And this report right now is just a head count report. But like Gordon said, we have we're going to work on getting other information. The headings at the top would be for full-time, half-time, part-time, and then the total for those groups. So, and then there's a grand totals at the bottom. So if anybody has questions, they can ask or let me know.
Jennifer, does this, when you get to say comparison between June and, I go back to that, between June and current month, July and current month, I guess. If someone leaves, do you show that as an open position, or is this strictly the people that are on payroll as of October?
Yeah, this is just strictly people that are on payroll. So it's coming from the number of people that we paid.
Okay.
Is where that comes from.
All right. And is the budget available in this type of format?
Not currently, but I've done a lot of work since last weekend, so got farther. So there'll be we'll have the ability soon to present, actual dollars being spent in these categories and hours being used, et cetera.
Okay.
And probably more of a focus on FTEs rather than headcount, because that's typically the direction we go with the budget. But doing the other pieces, the dollars and labor hours, will be able to get to FTEs pretty quick. So.
Anybody have any comments on this?
Yeah, Jennifer.
Hi.
I noticed in one area there is a reduction, and that in that particular area has somebody on maternity leave. Is that person on maternity leave still included in the final numbers?
They won't be unless they're getting paid. So most of the time when someone's on maternity leave, they're getting paid for, they're getting paid for some of that time, if not all of it. So they'll show up, excuse me, they'll show up if they're getting paid, but if they're in unpaid status, they will not show up. So this would be active headcount.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle or Yummy?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have questions.
And again, I think this becomes helpful when we progress towards the budgeting process, just so there's an understanding where our resources are deployed and or intended to be deployed on a forward basis. So. Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I know that wasn't a small amount of effort, so that is very much appreciated.
No worries.
Okay, Susan or Quan, you want to talk about legal fees?
Because we have a new attorney this year who is engaged more than our past attorney, and our attorney that retired had been with us for a number of years and was not charging us the going rate and frequently did not charge us at all for his time. We are likely to be under budget in our professional fees line by the time we get to the end of the year, because we have a new attorney, obviously, who, although cut his rate in order to work with us, is still charging us more than the other. We just wanted you to be aware that there may be a budget adjustment depending upon that overall line come spring.
Did you mean over budget? You said
Over budget. Yeah. Sorry.
So as we stand, we have 40,000 that was budgeted, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And we also, where is the additional?
If you,
Where's the additional that, I thought there was more to this.
yeah, there should be there should be more lines after 15,000.
Can you just give us the numbers, Quan?
Okay. There are two components under legal fees. One is business in general. The other one is employment. The business in general, based on the cost from July to September, we think it will be about $60,000 for the whole year.
60.
Yes, 60,000. For employment, maybe 15,000 for the whole year. So that's a total of $75,000 for legal fees. For comparison, last year we spent about $15,000 for both in legal fees. So
It's import docs.
the
Yeah, no,
the total amount of $75,000 is about $35,000 more than what we budgeted. And I don't believe we needed to amend the budget at this point. The overage may be able to be covered by the savings from other operational accounts. Right. We just need approval to continue to spend on the legal fees.
okay, so I'm gonna say.
What
your
am I missing up here? I mean, or we can't do our job without calling the attorney every time?
No, I mean, he's sitting in meetings. We didn't typically have 4-hour board meetings. We have the last couple of months. We've had some contracts that our previous attorney did not complete reviewing, so we've had to turn those in. But for the most part, it's what we would have asked Mr. Grubaugh to do.
But I'm just curious, I've noticed that he's been copied on a lot of emails lately. Are we getting charged for every one of those as well?
Not unless he's replying or he's involved. They're FYI emails only.
Can we get an answer for sure that we are not being charged every time he's being
Sure.
copied? Because if we're copying them, then I assume he's reading them and charging us for his time.
Okay.
If maybe we need to just do some more. Never mind.
Michelle, I think your question is probably, at what point is he up to speed on library affairs and doesn't need to attend every committee meeting? And I guess my question is, what contracts were not done prior to June 30th that he's having to review? What kind of
Well,
contracts?
he'd been given culinary literacy stuff, which is coming up down here, that that we thought he had reviewed and he had not. We didn't have any record of that.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're just going back
It's
and catching
operational
up.
type.
It's operational.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah, it's purely operational.
Just, I guess just another way to look. We have 40,000 in legal. We have 15,000, which is the last line of other. So that's 55. On the internal control side, we're going to spend 16, maybe 7, well, not over 16 because that's the cap we put on it. So
There's some extra there.
and the other operating expenses in the budget are over 10 million. I don't think we're going to have to adjust the budget. At least that's my view.
Oh, and the legal level of control for operating fund is at the activity level, not at the account level.
Right.
So as long as the all operational accounts under the budget, well fine.
Okay. Any other questions, Yemi or Michelle?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think Michelle had a good point. I do think, I just wanted to make sure we were going to see if he is copying us for those, the things, I mean, if he's charging us for all the emails that we are sending to him. I think I just wanted to make sure we get a handle on that.
He's not on every email, but I'm sure it looks that way to you, so.
No, I mean, I just want to have an answer to that if we are being charged for the emails that are copied to him.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move into old business, the Propville capital plan costs. And who is presenting this?
Oh, Jake is not here. Yeah, that's, if you want to go through it, you can.
Okay. Cody, I don't know what you have up there.
Yeah,
I think this was
it's a
sent out. to the
gigantic
full board.
document. I don't know.
I don't have anything in the presentation.
Yeah, it's
for-
because it's
for
a
this.
135-page document, so that's probably why it's not in there.
That makes sense.
It's in Word docs.
Okay.
Yeah, it is in Word docs.
Let me first review the board resolution from October. And I'm going to shorten this, but there were two components. The first was a report of expenses by type. And those types were the primary contractor, B&J Dunn, other contractors, architect fees, furniture and equipment, IT equipment, moving and storage, and any other category that was necessary. I would call that another category that might be material that was not named otherwise. It should also include all revenue sources for capital expenditures under Prop L, and that would be allocated amongst the COP funds, interest income, tax revenues that were allocated out of the in the budget process, proceeds from disposal of properties, pre-Prop L reserves, and again, any other category that would be material to the analysis. The second part of it was a summary of costs incurred plus those yet to be incurred to complete the plan in comparison to the original budget, original estimated costs in the new November 17 plan, and that's what I have with me. So again, the presentation shall be on a branch location and category basis in a format materially similar to the shown on pages 8 and 9 of the 2017 plan. Okay. So what we have, since we don't have that up there unless somebody can pull it up.
Cody, can you pull it up from Board docs?
Yes, I can. Which I've gotten expenditures by branch and a plan project update final. Which one would you
Do the
like me to pull
update
up?
title, because the numbers in the other spreadsheet are what's been used. for the overall document.
So if you have that, I would just ask you to go to page 3. Scroll down, there's some verbiage on the front end that I'm not going to read.
It's just a timeline.
Okay. So in this schedule, this is presented as the funding sources, which was 113,200,000. That was the original plan. I don't see in here interest income. I know there was interest, wasn't there, Quan?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing is that in checking Quan's financial statements, the total I have was able to pull was 102,023,000 plus. Right? So we're not in sync with the financial statements on this. Quan, were you consulted on this, involved in this?
I believe I provided a funding source with a total amount of $118 million.
118.
Yes.
Okay.
And
The numbers at the top say they came from the original budget as listed in 2019 MCPL annual budget.
Right. Well, those are the original numbers, I think.
Yes.
So what we're intending to show is what actual is. So where did the money? What are we actually using in total for sources, spending sources? And this doesn't look complete. One, it doesn't look complete. Second, it doesn't tie to the financial statement. So there should be two components. Where are we to date? And then what is the remainder that's necessary to complete the plan? Okay. That's one issue. Code, if you'll proceed to page 6. And page 6, which is the bottom, so that's this page, yeah. So it's the printed page, numbered page 6 at the bottom. Okay, again, we have what is I guess the original plan, and then the actual cost that as I understand that here, is what's actually been spent today. Again, the 98,990,000 is not a complete number. The intent was that we have, and again, it can be more than a single column that say, here's actual costs, here's what is yet to be expended, and and so this is the current estimated total, and how does that number, that revised total, compare to the original plan? So again, we don't have complete data here. That was requested. If you go to the next page, I had a couple questions on this. The Excel worksheet that was in board docs, I don't see this summary tab, I was thinking this was a summary tab, but I can't find it. The other thing is, again, there's a breakdown here. I see 25, if you scroll down, Cody, to the second column from the right, it totals 25 million. I don't know what that ties to. And again, without seeing how these numbers are pulled together from the Excel worksheet, it's hard to tell what the composition is. So again, I'd like to see this Excel format
Okay, Jim will have to provide that.
So, and again, it doesn't. This does not have all the data that was requested, which is the estimated cost yet to be expended. There's some work to be done here. At this point, I guess since we're now in November, I think it said this was through September.
correct, because we put this together in October. We
Right.
didn't have all the invoices.
So, I mean, we can either sync it up or get it up through October, but it still has to be complete for all the remaining projected costs in the plan.
Yeah, Gordon, this is Yami. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying. So when could we expect to have those numbers?
Jake's back tomorrow. We will ask him then.
So is it, Susan, is it something that just can be easily accessed?
I don't know. I will have to ask Jake. I know he got all the invoices from finance, so we will have to ask him.
Okay.
The other question I have that I guess and this is something for Brent and the building committee to address. I know this maintenance schedule was presented for the last board meeting, but I believe, and this is my, quick, simple review, is that it appears that some of the items in this maintenance were in the original capital plan. So I think that's something that we need to address as part of this process as well, is what was in the original plan, where dollars were contemplated to be spent within that 113 million, but that may have been redirected to other activities or other projects. And so what from the original plan has not been completed, either not completed or pushed out, and what does that mean in terms of our capital funding plan? Okay. And if there are questions, I would be glad to talk to Quan or Jake or the three of us get together to make sure we do this process once and have it complete.
Gordon, just a point of information, there is a guaranteed maximum price, which is coming to the board tomorrow for East Independence. So that will be a new number. It's about 6.6 million. And so there's a building committee at 3:30 to go over that. That information is in board docs. So the last remaining large capital item that would be out there would be the Riverside. So there's a number that wasn't available, I think, when this exercise was done before, about what that might cost. So the number came in favorable terms relative to what it is that we thought might happen. And it's comparable really to what the price was for Grand Valley. So the board will have the decision tomorrow about whether to approve the guaranteed maximum price on East Independence.
Okay. That's all. All right. Any other questions on that? I would hope that we can have this done before the next finance committee meeting. And if we need to call, well, if we have a December meeting, I'm not sure what our schedule is for December, but I'd like to have that done as soon as possible. I think this is information that we need to make decisions with for capital financing and capital funding, including East Independence. Quan, any other comments from you? No. Okay. Anyone else? Otherwise, I'm going to move on. Okay. Quan, do you want to give us an update on, if you remember, we approved in October the software installation. I just asked Quan to give us an update because it's not as easy as throwing a switch. There are some backup files that have to be done and converted, and there's a time process here. So can you give us a quick update?
Yes, we had a conference call with Blackboard a week ago. And the next step to the conference call just go over everything, the whole process, also training. The next step, we will have some implementation meetings with Blackboard. The implementation meetings will extract data file from us for testing, and also to review and to reset some settings for each module. Also, Blackboard offers a lot of training classes, depends on what we need. We will review and take some training classes for staff members. The whole process, my understanding is, will take about 6 to 8 weeks to complete. Well, just like many other organizations, Blackboard has some turnovers and understaffed. So I kind of think the whole process may take longer than 8 weeks to complete. That's my update on
So how do you think this will affect the review that Forbes is supposed to conduct?
I don't believe it will have any negative impact on the Forbes review, and any findings, recommendations from Forbes, I believe we can, implement along with Blackboard's conversion.
So your estimated completion time is what, January? No?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any questions, Michelle or Yummy? Let's move to 6.3, the Prop L RFQ, which was approved September.
Probably about that time. That sounds about right.
So what is the status of the draft? Because I haven't seen one.
I have not seen one.
Who's preparing it?
Jake. I know that he has made some, he's working on it. Let me find out where he is. He'll be back
So,
tomorrow.
Okay. Is there a reason he's handling it instead of Quan? Or anyone else?
I mean, it doesn't matter. It can be Quan or Jake, either one of them, but it's my understanding that Jake is doing it. I gave it to Jake.
Okay. Okay, 6.4, building maintenance reserve. I put this on the agenda. This has been a topic for the last few months, and a topic with Brent on the building committee side. The kind of the question I have is where should the planning, I guess, ownership reside? Because in ways it's a finance issue, in some ways it's a building management issue, but this is a reserve discussion that doesn't necessarily get into the technicals of actually replacing or rebuilding or repairing things. And I want to get the input from the finance committee in terms of what their thoughts are, Brent, as you as well, and anyone else, Bob, on this. Just for some perspective, Quan was able to locate something that was done back in 2004. Okay, pretty simple analysis. I mean, it's maybe about 10 pages here. I don't know what details are behind it. So there was something at some point where the library went out and looked at and did some engaged someone to pull some analysis together pull some, cost per square foot, and life cycle on different asset types. But it's this is pretty simple from my perspective. There are people that do this, I know. If you live in an HOA, you're probably familiar with reserve analysis. I did have a discussion with someone who works with this kind of a thing about, what they do, what the process is. And it's something we can talk about on a forward basis, but I guess I'd kind of like to get some input from the committee before we, have any what I'll call formal discussions in terms of again, what should we be doing? Because we do need to, if we have all these physical assets, I think, Jim, one of the things you told me on a phone call was that, there was a point at which our physical assets were not in the condition, in the desired condition. And having or will spend well in excess of $100 million on our assets, they need to be maintained, and they need to be maintained in the condition that the public expects, and that provides the kind of environment that they should have when they walk through the front door. So that is a rather substantial commitment. If you think about this, it's really long-term debt that's not on the balance sheet, and it's something that we have to factor in and keep in perspective, keep as part of the financial discussion, because when you look at resources between operations and capital assets, capital maintenance, we have to make sure we're allocating correctly from the top line before funds are directed to the operating side. So I'll open the floor for discussion. Ron?
Yeah, you had mentioned the HOAs, the HOA that that our residence is involved with. It conducts a procedure which I think is just a watered down version of something that could be applied here. And that's basically every year an engineer is engaged to go around and physically look at what requirements are anticipated, what must be addressed on an immediate basis to maintain the physical structure, and for items that are reasonably anticipated to compute a cost for that to be addressed at a later time. And then our HOA board establishes reserves from our association fees to actually fund that known expected financial requirement. And I would envision that as being clearly an element of the building committee in charge with the physical structure, and of course to the finance committee for you and this committee to make sure that the money is available when at such later time it's needed. Again, I would think it requires some engineering expertise, but that of course is your decision. But I think it's really quite imprudent not to anticipate that, even though the buildings are new and beautiful and very sound, that there won't be ongoing maintenance, eventually substantial requirements.
Yeah, obviously it's come fairly quickly for me, although I'm aware of the building program. But so is there an individual or a department within the district that tracks the public works expenditures and the maintenance there too?
Well, go ahead.
Let me try to, I appreciate this conversation, actually. Hey, Cody, could you pull up the worksheet that shows what it is that we're talking about? It's the one that says 13 million. So
You're talking about the one that was presented in October?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because that can help, I think.
Cody, it looks like, you can't see if I hold it up, you can't see.
Yeah,
There we go.
that.
Yes.
So anyway, so this was something that came to the building committee in response to a request from the finance committee. And so this is relatively new information, and it's relative order of magnitude. For what it is worth, I don't want to date myself, but I might be the only one who is in the room, other than maybe one other person who was here in 2004. And in 2004, when the time that you were at the library district, is the library district didn't have a lot of in-house capabilities. And so you had a library director, you had a business manager, and you had a board secretary who served as an HR function or department. And that was, for the most part, the extent of the senior leadership team. So the need to have somebody outside go do it was obviously apparent, because in some senses, the internal skills did not exist in the organization. There still may be some benefit in going in and having somebody else, in the case of the HOA example, unless the HOA has, that resource within the HOA, then you would go to somebody outside that. We're in a different situation, particularly coming off of a long and 4 or 5 year capital program where we have architects and we have contractors and we have an internal resources, that there may be the capacity, to go in and produce this. If you want somebody to go back and review it or verify it, there may be some benefit in that. So this was somebody's suggestion. This was Jake's suggestion about when these expenses might be incurred. But as I think I shared at the last board meeting, it doesn't necessarily mean is that you can't shift a 2003 expense to a 2004 expense. Gordon, to your earlier point, some roofs that were in the original capital program were decided as they had additional lifespan on them for 4 or 5 years. And so those were pulled out of that. And that's why it is that you have a lot of roofing projects that show up in this worksheet. So one would say, well, if we went through and we touched all these sort of buildings, why is it that we're making roof repairs? Well, because we thought there was additional life into them. So that's an important component of this. The two big things that I would identify on this, and in some senses, the building committee talked about this. I think Michelle's was in the meeting or not in the meeting. We probably have not done a proper assessment about what the needs of this particular building are. And that's a lot of the big ticket items in there. And the bottom one, I'm encourage staff to talk about this, is that the security at the bottom, it's about $660,000. So we've had a lot of discussion about cybersecurity and what it is that it looks like, but we've not probably had. And frankly, I would say I've been remiss because I didn't ask about it, but I didn't know I needed to ask about it all, is that we have a really antiquated, outdated building security program, which is the software is no longer supported. That when somebody moves from building to building, somebody has to reassign them to that. So we don't have probably the proper security system for the management of the assets that we have, that we know when somebody enters a building with a key card or not. So the discussion that occurred really around that, and Dustin was here for that conversation because I think he is charged with security, is that the idea is that you don't have to do this whole $660,000 at one time, but you probably would take some cohort of libraries, test out the system, make sure that it does what it does, and sort of scale it up. So is this something, Gordon, to your point, is this something that has to be in the next year budget? Probably not. Could you push it off 1 year or 2 years or 3 years? Perhaps, but at some point you are going to have to accumulate the resources to address the maintenance needs.
Let's just back to the broader issue. And one thing I didn't mention when I had that conversation, which was just kind of a general fact finding for me, these firms that do these analyses have, I guess, what I'll call a proprietary form of software. It's really Excel driven, and it's nothing you can't build yourself. But they do have a database. They are aware of what's going on in the market, the industry. They can tell you what an HVAC system costs for a $10,000 building and what the average lifespan is. So once they get engaged, if we had someone like that as a business partner, then you go through the initial analysis, which is going to be costly. I did some numbers in my head, so I'm not going to talk about it here, but it's going to be costly. And then you get into an annual maintenance after that point, to where it's like you say, if the roof was expected to be 20 and we can do something to extend it to 25 or 30, it pushes that cost out, and again, it comes in. And so this, this, I think, is something we have to deal with. Again, as I said, this is long-term debt on the, that is not on the balance sheet. We have to manage this liability. Waiting until something breaks to address it is in my view, not the prudent way of taking care of your assets.
So as we think about who's best suited to do this, I would actually also encourage us to look at our general contractor, J.E. Dunn, because they also have this kind of information. And so they would have some familiarity with these buildings that we might be able to ask them to do the work, or there might be reasons that we shouldn't ask them to do the work because they did the work and you want somebody, an independent party, to go look at it all. But, you know, it's an exercise that it has some merit. I just wanted to add the commentary in 2004. There was nobody around in this particular building that had the least had the skill, the time, and the ability to kind of get what it is that you see on the screen.
So, yeah.
So is there a set aside in the budget for a fund that is there for maintenance?
The capital, there's a capital fund, there's a general fund and the capital fund. And it'll take longer to give you the history, but typically or historically, the excess of the operating funds were transferred into the capital fund after the end of the year. While that worked for a while, I don't know that I think that's the best way to approach this. I think we should be doing this on the front end basis, and we should be allocating dollars off the top in the budget process. So right now you don't see it in the budget. The capital plan or the capital account has assets in it that at the time were deemed sufficient to finish the capital spending, all the capital expenditures. The amount that's available for reserves is a question mark because we don't know what the reserves should be. So this has, this is something we have to get our arms around within, I'm going to tell you, within at least within a 24-month period.
Well, I concur that there needs to be some planning for maintenance because it's going to occur. Yes. Obviously, we have somewhat, I assume there's a record of the age of all these physical assets.
Right.
So, but yeah, I certainly appreciate wanting to set something aside for specifically for the kind of maintenance that we're talking about.
Right. And again, some of those, some of those maintenance costs are going to be set aside and they may be 20 years out. But you have to.
It needs to be there in 20 years.
Yes, exactly. So
yes,
that's.
I like to deal with it incrementally and not just wait and then here it is.
Totally agree.
And Bob, as one of the point of encouragement of the finance chair is that the board has talked about establishing a building maintenance reserve fund that would be a sub-account of the capital account. And what we committed to do, we take next year to figure out what's a methodology or what's approach or how do we understand what those costs might be. That was one question. The second, and then how do you then sort of fund it so that you can accumulate the funds so that they're available when you need them. So some structural work has been done. The informational part of it all still remains to be worked through.
Okay, Michelle or Miami?
Yeah, I've got an observation or question. I'm just curious, in our policy and procedures manual, isn't there something that must pertain to this? Isn't there something that, especially about, assess, like Ron was saying, assessing the things just about the properties, the buildings, is there nothing like that in our existing policy and procedure manual?
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. We look at when we do get into budget season, we do look at what needs to be done, and depending upon what it is, it either comes out, we plan it for the capital plan, which goes to the board as part of the budget process, or it comes out of operating. There are some guidelines on what comes out of which one. If it's a one-off expense and it's over $50,000, it generally comes out of the capital plan, like a new parking lot, something along those lines. If it's not $50,000, if it's something that we can do for less, it's often in the operating under the building maintenance. And I don't know what the fund code is. I don't know what the fund line is for that, but it's in the operating side of the general budget.
Yeah, I mean, my response is actually the board adopted a policy to establish a building maintenance fund, and that's what it is that we're, moving to. So do you find it in the rules and the procedures, but we've taken a policy view. Is that something that we need to do when we're just in the very preliminary stages of it, right?
Yeah. Just a side note on that, the current policy from the budgeting standpoint is anything under 50,000 goes into operating. I've talked to Quan about that. I think that number is too high because some of those, something that's 40,000 could easily have a 10-year life. I'd rather that be under what I'll call the managed asset side as opposed to a maintenance. Maintenance to me is, fix a plumbing break and do regular routine maintenance on HVAC systems. Major repairs, I think, belong in the capital side. So one of the parts of the budget I want to address is to lower that threshold.
Well, yeah, I guess my question or concern is about the procedure. You know what I mean? So we're not taken by surprise. Maybe we need a more of a formal procedure that discusses when the evaluation of the buildings or whatever it is, whatever other properties, when will that take place? So we're never, caught by surprise.
I think we'll get to that point. We're just not there. So is that okay? I think there's a general consensus that we need to do this. How we tactfully address it, we still need to go through the process. And I think when we get through the next budget cycle, we'll have a much better handle on what that should be. So I don't want to, I want to defer that to a future meeting. But I agree that we have to have some parameters in place and some structure around this.
Yeah, and I think that's a micro thing. I mean, it's probably something that as staff is doing this year, then they can be thinking of, well, what would be an appropriate procedure that we could get in place? Because I do think that we've identified something that we really need to just be cognizant of so we can prepare financially and without surprise.
Okay, anything else? I'm going to move on. All right, who's going to update us on central bank and discussions? Just for some background on this, Bob, you're new. Quan and I met with the central bank in September, or no, early October. We have two different accounts at central bank. The primary operating accounts are there. They have two investment accounts. One is for the operating fund. One is for the capital fund. There appeared to be a little bit of communication problem that happened, and so some assets were. Some of the investments have a duration that goes out into 4 and 5 years. That were purchased at very low interest rates. And so we're sitting with significant unrealized losses on those right now. So we have to wait for those to mature. So Quan and I met with them just to talk about that, talk about the process. I believe yesterday they met with Susan and Quan. So
Go ahead.
So we'll have an update based on that.
Last week, yeah.
Last week.
Or last week.
To the library. Well, the purpose of that meeting, Central Trust had that meeting with us is to confirm what we want from them. And Gordon and I went to Central Bank branch in Blue Springs in early October. We basically asked them to review the current proposal and the fee structure. The current proposal they made it to us in 2016. And last week's meeting, Central Bank, they asked how low we would like to see the fee. And also they want to know if we would prefer a flat amount instead of a commission-based, which is about 15 basis points of the asset. That's the current fee structure. And I told them we'd like to see a proposal by Monday. And they emailed to us just right before the meeting. And the email, they reviewed the charges to the library. Look back a couple of years, in 2020, we paid about $64,000 to Central Trust. Last year, 2021, we paid about $66,000 to Central Trust. Current year, the estimated amount is $45,000. Well, that's about $22,000 smaller than last year because Central Trust waived a 4 month of service fee. In their email, they proposed a flat amount of $30,000, which is about half of what they are charging now. They did not say exactly how long they are going to keep the new rate, $30,000 a year, as flat amount, but they did say they will keep that special fee until there is a change in business conditions. So that's the new update from the bank.
Go ahead.
Hey, Clark, what does the $30,000 transfer to in terms of a percentage of assets under management?
Okay, we have two accounts. Capital account, we have about $20 to $25 million for now, for the next 3 years. For operating account, maybe $40 million on average, but those are short term, only between January and May. So in terms of percentage wise, maybe about 7.5 basic points instead of 15 they're charging now.
But the investments are by statute highly restricted. So in terms of actual effort, is there, in your opinion, is there a lot of portfolio management that they would have to do?
Not for the capital account.
Okay.
Well, from the standpoint of selecting securities, neither account because we're under constraints of the statute.
Yeah.
So again, just to refresh, we have in the capital, in the operating fund, those assets are kept fairly liquid. Again, to address the drawdown through November, the dollars come in just December through March. They build up and then they're drawn down again. The capital fund will be hopefully an ongoing adequate reserve of some number. And I don't know what that is. I think 10 million was the old number. I don't think that number is going to stay that low. But again, I don't until we finish that analysis. I'd like to, if it's okay, I'd like to, with the committee, I'd like to have Quan do an analysis and look at our averages and our cash flow and see how that stacks up against what we think, what I'll call, what the rate should be. Again, there are two ways to do this. One is a flat fee. One is a percentage of the assets on a monthly basis. And the third is a transaction fee that would probably entail some additional small amount of fee for being the custodian. So the more times you buy, the more you'll pay a transaction fee. But if you buy, as I said last month, if you buy a 5-year bullet, you pay the transaction fee and you're done. And you spread that over 5 years, it's a pretty small number. So I'd like to let Quan have some time to do this and we can bring it back to the committee and the board, but it's in the right direction. Yes.
I appreciate the opportunity to have to pay a lower fee. I have a concern about liquidity, particularly as we take on additional capital projects. And so if our funds are in that account or tied up for a 5-year period, I think this is a real challenge that you know, will receive, needs to have some attention to it all because we may face it sooner than later.
Right now, Quan is the person directing the timing of it because he has the cash flow schedule. My recommendation is we don't let central bank make those decisions in terms of where the duration is. What they buy, their decision, or it can be their decision, but the duration targets have to be set by Quan based on liquidity needs.
That's a go forward basis. My concern is particularly if we approve the East Lee Summit and the Riverside project, will sufficient funds be available to meet the obligations as they're presented to us?
Don't have that answer right now.
Juan, do you want to address that?
We have to make some strategic decisions.
So one of the things I've asked Quan to do, or we started again, but looking back and presented in October, trying to remember, was what those cash flow look like over the years. I've asked him to keep track of cash flow on a monthly basis so we have a better understanding of how things work during the year in terms of expenses. While some of our expenses are spread like peanut butter, we have other ones where they basically buy the annual cost up front. Most of our database subscriptions are one-time purchases. There may be enough in the operating fund to cover this, but I don't know the answer to that. And I think we should know the answer to that before we commit to some major projects. So,
well, I mean, this will come up tomorrow. I can tell you that there's a guaranteed maximum price, and then the cost escalation for delaying it is 8%, and it's not an inconsequential amount. So, you know, while we might ideally want to know this ahead of time before the meeting tomorrow, is that we do have a real opportunity for a guaranteed maximum price. And I hope there would be support to approve it because it's not getting any cheaper in outlying years. Stay tuned. I mean, we'll be here at 3:30 tomorrow. So at the building committee. So if people want to come in and hear prior to the board meeting, you know, please come. But, you know, we do have a decision in front of us tomorrow for a bid that is good through the end of the year. So we may not have a strategy or we may not have a plan about how to address liquidity within the time frame of the expiration.
So you don't absolutely have to have a decision tomorrow night.
We do.
You said through the end of the year.
Well, we can have a special. We can have a special.
So that the prices are guaranteed for 6 more
The
months.
prices are guaranteed through the end of December. So the part of it, we could come back in December and have a special board meeting to consider it, but delaying it and pushing it into 2023, the bids will have been expired.
Okay, but if we don't know our funding, I guess I don't know how you can approve spending something if you know you have liquidity constraints. And if you have what is now 45 days to decide, I would rather do the analyses and make sure that we, you know, if you commit to something, that you can actually do it. So unless that's kind of where I am.
Well, when I look at the financial statement, the money is there available to it, whether it got inappropriately tied up and created the liquidity problem. I'm saying that there's a cost, an opportunity cost for delay.
Well, and there's a cost to taking it and to making those assets in the capital fund liquid, and it's going to be about 10% loss. So if you want $10 million, you're going to eat 200,000. That's not inconsequential.
And I'm saying is that the cost of escalation of putting it off is probably $600,000 or $700,000. So there's a trade-off, and that's why I'm asking this here, and that's why I'm asking for it now, so that I can tell you what the cost of the escalation might be. I'm asking for the cost of what the liquidity challenge is.
Yes.
So I can kind of review the set aside for the 5-year time period. What source of funds are those? I think we have something that's a 5-year, so the central. That's nothing I want to, is this Central Bank out of Jefferson City or is this Central Bank of the Midwest, which is owned by Central Bank? Who are we dealing with here?
Central Investment.
It's
We're dealing
Central
with the
Bank,
trust department, okay? The
Jefferson
trust,
City.
Yes.
well, I don't know, I think the people are here local, but
Yeah, they are.
but it's
local.
the trust department. And as I explained, when you get into the banking side of this, you either deal with what I'll call the capital markets division, okay, which deals only with fixed income assets. And then you have the trust side, which tends to be, which, you know, I'm going to speak traditionally textbook here, where people turn their assets over to them to manage, okay, and say, you take care of it, don't bother me, you know, just tell me how you did, okay. Capital markets is much more involved. Central Bank does not have a capital markets division. So what we're doing with Quan is operating really like we are. And so once this was flagged last spring, is now Quan is actively involved in making what I'll call the duration decisions. So there, and we you know, I would suggest if you can update that and we can get a handle on this, we might have it for discussion tomorrow night. If we think there's things that have to be addressed, then, you know, my view is we have 45 days to make that decision. I would not rush to the decision. It's just.
And I'm happy to have a special board meeting in December in order to deal with that. So I'm just looking at the presentation because I don't trust my memory anymore. But for the building committee, this is at an 8% escalation construction, which is reasonable. So if we push it off 1 year, the cost of that is $523,000. And so if we push it off 2 years, that's another 8%. So that's 565,000. And the idea is that 6% inflation construction in 2024 would be 45,382. So there's a cost of delaying the project additional years that in some senses we have to figure out what the financing strategy might be that allow us to realize the savings that we otherwise would incur additional costs in outlying years. So that's why I raised this actually at the last board meeting. I said, and in some senses, this is not like a surprise that occurred to us, like the air conditioner went out or the building that got damaged by the storm. This was a project that we always had under schedule. So the notion is that somehow is that we're surprised that we're going to be incurring this cost for East Independence. It was always on the program. It was always in the plan.
Well, I get, how much is in that 5-year purchase you referenced? How much is in that purchase?
Well, that was one. Okay, so if you look at the schedule, and I don't know if I can either send it to you or it's up in board docs, but if you look at the schedule, we have assets maturing in every year for the next 5 years. But the problem is more than half of it is out 2 years, Quan.
Yes, $15 million will be 3 years from now.
Yeah, 3 years out. So,
Well,
yeah, that's the problem. And so these were bought with when rates were down in the basement. And, you know, when you're earning 60 basis points, paying 15 for custodial fee, that doesn't leave you much. And then when the rates pop to over 4%, which they did this year, and I don't think they're coming down. So in fact, they're probably going higher.
well, I think one more raise, but
Anyway, that's outside the scope of this.
sure. Well, I just know at the time, I didn't know how much was.
So I think, Quan, if you know, we can take the time, we need to take the time to update that analysis and kind of see what the cash flow needs are. So, and probably get a little closer to where the expected outgo is. So,
And that would be helpful. Just one last comment. The bill for the project doesn't all occur at once. So understanding the staging of them would also be helpful to understand. So
there are other projects going on too.
yeah.
So, okay. All right. Gosh, I'm supposed to last this long. Okay, branch stats. I'm going to be very quick on this. I asked Jim for just, again, kind of like with the personnel, to get started with some data. And he sent me some numbers. And can we pull up that worksheet? Quan, are you driving Are you driving?
Cody is.
Cody is.
Cody is, okay. So can you pull up that worksheet?
When do you want,
Yes.
Pardon me?
there's two.
Which one do you want?
Yeah, he's looking for the one that was that he sent back.
What I sent that has the charts in it.
Okay. Let me
Yeah, no, Cody
see
has
if
it.
this is it.
It's right.
There we go. Okay, so if you can, all right, you can shrink that just a little bit. I will just give you a quick rundown. We're not going to go through this in detail. This is really for you to look at. So I took Jim's data. There are 3 data sets that he gave me. One was circulation, one was internet access, and the other was door count. And so the reason I asked was just to get an idea of what trends were. So on the left hand and the center charts are both branches. When you click on the cell at the upper left, Cody, there should be an arrow right there. If you click on the arrow, you will see a drop-down menu and you can select a branch. So pick a different one, if you will. I think I had it on Parkville. Just do there we go. So what happens is you'll see it changes the charts. So the left chart, the y-axis scale according to the branch. The center chart, those are fixed y-axes. And I did that just to get an idea of where the branch stands relative to the totals. And over on the third column are just the totals. So the only thing I would point out here, Cody, if you go over to the right drop-down menu at the top, on the third column, there you go. Click on that cell, click on the arrow, scroll down. There should be one that you should go to the virtual library, which is under, these are in alphabetical order. So if you just arrow up, you'll find the virtual library. And I think you probably all know this, but that's what's happening. So our circulation is increasingly going virtual. That has ramifications over time. I don't know where, that's the trend. So this is 10 years of data, and you can see what's happening. So the other lines that are in there are percentages of but I stuck in some population data that I pulled together off the Mark website. So anyway, this is for you to go in and look at and just get some idea of what's happening on the branch level. I think this is great information that Jim has. I know there's some perspective around it in terms of what's happening with each branch. And there are probably some other data points that need to be pulled into the discussion, but that's gives you some idea of what's going on. And the reason if you go back to Parkville, I don't know who you have up there, I can't see, but just as a matter of reference point, Parkville has doubled in the last 10 years. In the last 25 years, it's probably tripled in size. And so I think it's interesting to see what happens to the branch as the population increases. And some of that population has been the last few years. So I think again gets into, are people even aware that the library is sitting there? Because we have a lot of new people moving in, and are they utilizing the library? So that's it. I don't want to go through the details. I'd like the committee to do this. We'll give the rest of the board this. And as I said, Jim, there are other things that you'll add into the discussion. And if there's any corrections, I've asked Quan to just kind of fly spec the formulas and make sure that everything's in sync. Jim, you have any comments?
One thing, one thing that's noted kind of in the original numbers, and it's a little bit harder to see here in the charts, although the charts do a good job of showing over time, is, the 2 COVID years obviously have a great impact. The trend line about percentage, I want to look at that a little closer now that I'm sitting here looking at it and seeing it up there. Because it looks like in all of them, the percentage line dips when the bar dips, but that, given the fact that that was COVID, I would think, the percentage would have actually stayed pretty similar instead of dipping. So I'm not sure. There might be something that needs
Yeah, and again, this
reoriented there.
This is a first cut of data.
And the other thing that was difficult about basically 18 through till now is that there's branches opening and closing for construction. And so that doesn't impact the totals as much as it impacts, I mean, it does impact the totals, but what it really impacts is if you're trying to compare one branch to the other, it messes with that a little bit. So we can keep going back. The other thing I think I would say about it is the three things we provided weren't necessarily the three most relevant statistics. They were the three statistics we could put together for 10 years the most easily. So that was as a starting point to start pulling things together. There's things like programming we'll want to add to this. And then obviously I want to consult with our branch group about it as well, because one of the things they've commented on over the years, as you have pointed out there, is that virtual has been taking on more of the circ. So, I think anybody looking at it asks the question, okay, so if branch staff are checking out fewer books as a percentage, then where's that attention going? And I know Jacqueline's with our branch group, and they've been working on a model along with Jennifer. I think I might have said that in an email back to you about what drives branch staffing costs. And so that's another piece to kind of pull alongside this, is to talk about what it is we're seeing, what sorts of activity we're seeing in branches. The one other thing I think is worth pointing out about door count is, as virtual circ increases, one of the types of door count that tends to go down is somebody walking in and picking up a hold off the shelf and walking out. That doesn't always mean a lot of staff attention or time. So you might actually walk into one of our branches and see that it's as busy as it looked when the door count was 30% higher, but that's because people are still coming in for the types of uses that are, hanging around, being at programs, doing things like that, but not just, the pick and go. So all those are things we've got to look at context around this.
Right. That's great. Yeah, again, this is not intended to be conclusive. This is a start. So, and it may help by, prompt some discussion about what other statistics maybe we're not even gathering at this point that are better indicators about where resources should be going.
It's absolutely true that as a library system, we've been gathering statistics that we've been gathering for a long time. And so, and we know the use has changed and the model has changed for how we provide service, but we've still got a lot of the same statistics. Honestly, like tomorrow night, I will, do the quarterly stats report again at board meeting. And there's a reason why we started looking at the transaction number as opposed to the CERT number. That was an initial stab at trying to understand activity separate from just checkouts, which was sort of the time honored, way to look at libraries. So,
okay. Anyway, thanks for doing that. Any other comments, questions? Yami or Michelle? Ron? Okay. Okay, let's move into the Culinary Center matter, and we have to talk about establishing I think, unless you're going to do this, I just want to give a little bit of a broad overview here. The Culinary Center is at the, for those where is it, the Great Hills branch. I think there are two issues here. One is just the overall method that is going to be proposed. The second is what those actual costs are and what the rate is going to be. Those are not necessarily the same thing, and they're not part of the motion. So the motion is going to be strictly the method we follow. There will be subsequent discussion and activity about what the actual rates are and what the cost what that cost amount is. So with that,
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for taking some time. Let me talk to you. Exactly. Looking at specifically the Culinary Center Incubator Program.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm
Thank
Xander
you.
Winkle. I am the director of the Culinary Center. Thank you. I get too excited. I was
I know.
let's jump into the things.
Not everybody knows who you are.
Nope. Excellent point. So if we can go to the next slide. So yeah, those 2 points. One is we want to set the rate that we would charge those startup food businesses using the incubator space at cost recovery. Right now, with the best information that we have, that cost is $20 an hour for kitchen use, and $20 per month for dedicated dry storage, and $50 a month per unit of dedicated cold storage. And we want to approve the use and setting up a Stripe account. The purpose of that is to use a specific customer management tool that is designed explicitly for what we're doing for incubator shared kitchen spaces. Can we go to the next slide? And the overall purpose of the incubator is to help small businesses, help create jobs in local businesses. And we want to have a successful operation for doing so. Can we move to the next slide? All right, digging into some of the details here, we're looking at approximately $120,000 of maximum expenses and a maximum revenue of about $139,000. And then we're also looking at what that will be initially, because we're not going to fill up as much demand as we anticipate. We just simply cannot start at that maximum. So initially looking at expenses around $61,000, and then those initial revenues that first year just under $40,000. In that revenue model too, it's important if we're looking at the maximum kitchen rental of that $115,000, that's about a 22% utilization rate compared to a theoretical maximum of there's 3 individual spaces that could be rented by 3 different businesses. I apologize, I'm standing like right in your way, aren't I? So in theory, in a day, you could rent out 72 hours, but that's simply not going to happen. So looking at that initial rate, probably about 5-6% utilization compared to a theoretical maximum as we're getting going. Our expenses are accounting for all of the different operations, our staff, and the equipment in the building itself. Can we go to the next slide? If you're like me, I love a visual representation. Just kind of looking over the course of 5 full years of operation, what that might look like, revenues versus expenditures. Can we go to the next slide? And then let's look at some comparables. So there's a handful of other shared use spaces within the metro area. So if we take all of those, average them together, we're looking at about $21.75 for hourly use for kitchens. If we expand that and we look at all the shared kitchens that are advertised in Missouri, Kansas, and Iowa, we're looking at an average about $16.80. And of course, those shared kitchens come with different amenities, different sizes, but taking that more broad look at the different spaces and kind of where they land. Can we go to the next slide? All right, Stripe in the food corridor. So one of the, really the only customer management tool that I'm aware of that is built specifically for shared use kitchen spaces is the food corridor. So the beauty there is it automates all of the booking and the billing and the paperwork and everything that you need to do. You set it up, you set your clients up, and then it manages a lot of that would typically be staff intensive of booking the space and billing all the clients and making sure that they're paying on time and making sure that we're keeping all of their paperwork up to date. Now, one of the things that we have to do to use that system is utilize Stripe, the payment gateway system, to accept payments. So we would use that Stripe account. It would be tied to the food corridor, then tied to our bank to be the gateway for those payments to make sure that we're collecting them and they are going back into our thinking. Can we go to the next slide? And then we're back to the request. So based on that, just kind of looking at what those costs are going to be, what a reasonable revenue stream would be for the space, we're looking at a cost recovery right now about $20 an hour. We're also asking that the committee would consider us opening up a Stripe account to use that customer management tool for the culinary center. That is all I've got. I would happily take any questions. And I apologize, there is a meeting I have to get to at 1 o'clock, but that gives plenty of time for questions. So thank you all very much.
I have questions. Is that okay if I go? Okay. Can we pull up the worksheet coding? I guess one of the first questions I had is how does this compare to what was initially, did we do some initial projections before we even built this thing that would tell us, are we on plan? Are we in the range of what we thought we were going to be doing?
I'm not aware and correct me if I'm wrong.
I've been here on some, the question is probably more so directed at Quan and Susan. Did we have initial projections?
I don't believe I have seen any of
Yeah,
those.
Steve did them, we don't, I weren't privy to them.
I do think Steve had kind of some initial thoughts based on, his survey of what else was going on around. We'd have to go back and find him, but yeah, I know in many public meetings, he said, the cost to use these would be similar to what is seen in the market, in our local market. And he kept, he often used the Innovation Center as an example of how this was run. So
where's the worksheet? Or am I looking at that? This looks like a PDF. Or is this a worksheet page, Cody? One of the questions I had was the useful lives that were used, and I didn't print this off.
All right. Gordon, let me pull that up one moment.
That would be appreciated. Okay, I think the tab equipment, is that it?
Yeah, there's an equipment tab, yeah.
And if you'll blow that up a little bit. So the lives on these, I see a lot is 30 years. If you just kind of slowly scroll down, 30, a few tens in here. The building, I think, was further down. Keep going, keep going. Building is shown at 50 years. So Quan, how do these sync up with what is depreciable lives? What is the
Right now,
50 years in a building seems
I
like a
know
little
the
bit of a stretch.
depreciation schedule we use, the 10-year for equipment and the 30-year for the building.
Okay, but 30 years is for the initial cost of the building. That does not include the maintenance along the way, correct?
If it's improvement, that's 15 years.
Okay. So somewhere in that, and I can't see that number. If you increase that coding just a little bit, okay. Oh,
Here, I
thank
got
you. All right. So is this touch screen?
No, it is not
All
touchscreen,
right,
sorry.
So you're gonna make me navigate this thing.
When I got updated, the touchscreen went away, so.
Okay, well, so I guess my broad concern here is that we're probably a little generous with the lives, which is going to translate into the cost calculation. And that I think we have to review this relative to that. Some of that equipment maybe 10 years is better for all of it, as opposed to 30 years. I don't know if anything, well, I know some things last 30 years, but whether or not we'll actually keep them around or they break, whatever the case may be. So I would like us to coordinate that and get some different lives in there, because then you get a little bit of perspective. The other piece is the, take it you're having to leave, Brent. Thank you. Thank you for coming. The other piece is whether we have factored in what I'll call the ongoing maintenance into this within the operating side. And again, I didn't look at that, but I think we have to look at that to make sure we've captured all the costs. Another piece that I had written down were, do we have, or are we taking into consideration headquarters costs? And do we have everybody factored in? Do we have factored in cost of staffing to include all the benefits costs and the retirement and everything, which is typically about 35% of the base rate. So anyway, so those are the kind of questions I have. I don't have answers, but we have some work to do.
Yep. No, those are very fair points. And the beauty of setting it at cost recovery is this is a living document. Right now, we're looking at projections without actually operating. So as we operate, we can modify that as we get actual historical numbers. So you're absolutely right on the lifespan of the equipment. That's probably, so in my most recent calculations, I'm reducing that. Even at our maximum capacity though, in a shared use kitchen environment, we're still not, kind of like a car, we're not putting a lot of miles. Those pieces of equipment are designed to be flipped on every single day, run most of the time that restaurant is operating. Even in a shared use capacity, we'll still get some good lifespan, but that's part of my calculations, reducing that amount. Somewhere still on the higher end of industry average, might be 15 to 20 years for most commercial pieces of equipment, but that's an excellent point.
Any other questions, comments? Just Michelle, Yummy, Bob?
My only comment was I thought, and I haven't seen this until now, those are probably a little high in terms of length of economic life. And I appreciate your comments that that'll be reduced for reality.
Yeah, I guess my thought is that I think to have detailed financial analysis would be extremely helpful. And what I'm thinking of is something a little bit different than the contractual arrangement you have with your customers. You know, obviously, we're not worried about a cost recovery for the children's center that come in to get books. It's unthinkable to charge a young parent or custodian for the availability of kids' books. But in something like this, that strikes me, if we could maybe think about distinguishing, for example, from a very, very promising yet brand new company, maybe it's not unrealistic to anticipate a lower fee schedule for them, less than cost recovery, compared to a building that has some mileage under itself, has demonstrated profit, but just wants to come in to get a kicker to make more money. My thought would be, well, maybe they should cover the fees for the one that's promising but brand new that doesn't have the cash. And maybe, again, it's a gradation from absolute unthinkable no cost for kids' books to somebody that, hey, you're already making money, you're going to pay for it.
Oh, that's an excellent point. So yeah, we can definitely take that into consideration. So it makes absolutely sense.
If you don't have enough already, yeah. But
yeah. If there's somebody just coming in, they've got zero revenue. We want to be able to make that available to them.
But then, if you and your staff who have been in the industry can say, okay, there's a definite promise here, whatever, that this judgment call, it's a prudential call on your part, of course. But I think, maybe they're more, if deserving is the proper word, of a break.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense. Thank you.
But I think we need the numbers to have you as the managers come up with those ideas.
I have a question. This is Michelle.
Oh, yes.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. Is there any way to, save any money on just on any of the equipment, by maybe, like I was actually just having a conversation with somebody the other day about this building and the programs. And then as it happens, how our phones are listening to us. an ad came up across my news feed on Facebook about like used restaurant equipment from places that are going out of business. Is there any way to save any money by going that route versus buying everything brand new?
That's an excellent question. At this point, the equipment for the most part, this does include some equipment that is not yet purchased. But for the most part, 90+% of it is already purchased and en route or in a warehouse. But it's a great point that there is some really good. My favorite are the dent sales. Like, it's still a perfectly new piece of equipment, but somebody like bumped a forklift into it and we save thousands of dollars. I think going forward, as we get a better idea of what pieces of equipment are needed for the businesses that we're working with, that could absolutely be something that we look at as we are acquiring new pieces of equipment later on through the life of the incubator.
Okay.
And I get those, because of my work, I get those ads all the time on my personal Facebook.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So what's causing the opening delay?
Right now, it's supply chain issues. We've got just some of our equipment that the manufacturers aren't able to fulfill some dates. There's just, whether it's igniters or different components of the equipment that are delayed further out in the supply chain. So right now the delay is primarily all of the equipment that goes into the kitchen spaces.
So are we committed to these? I guess I'm coming back to Michelle's point. If these are out there and I mean, you don't have set delivery dates, then how can you set an opening? How can you, I mean, you know,
I mean, why, if they can't fulfill, if we've paid for it and they can't fulfill the contract, why couldn't we cancel and buy something somewhere else so that we can get this up and going?
I know, and this is a little bit outside of my arena, but I do know that Jake is having conversations with our rep on looking at what potentially alternatives might be. So some of the equipment is accounted for, some of it is not. I don't know exactly those details. So that one's a little outside of my realm.
But isn't that, but I'm not trying to be difficult here, but why don't you know? Because you are in charge of this.
So as far as the contract, I am not. So that is something that I believe Jake and Quan are more in charge of, the contract components as far as switching things out and making alterations. As far as the specific schedules on when we are estimated to have pieces of equipment, Trimark is updating me on those specifics. So I have an idea. I know, hey, the pieces from Garland, those have come in. The pieces from Advanced Tabco, those we're waiting until, XYZ date. So As far as the details, I do have those, but as far as the contract negotiation, I don't have those details, and that's less within my realm of control.
Okay, so I guess this would go to Susan then, if I can continue. I mean, why wouldn't, because he doesn't have a program to run right now. He's doing his what he can, but we're not open. Why wouldn't we punt some of this stuff to him and give him a little bit more control over his branch and over his program to problem solve and get this open?
Yeah, let me work with Jake and SDA and those folks who have the contracts and with Xander, and we can see what we can.
Okay. Well, it just sounds to me like Jake is clearly got a lot on his plate. So maybe we need to delegate this to people that have the time to do it and that have a little better grasp of the environment.
Yes.
Yeah,
Let me see
it seems like we have a bottleneck.
Yeah.
And I totally agree, Michelle. This needs to get pushed into done. Have we expended funds? I mean, Quan, have we put down deposit payments on this? Or is this pay on delivery?
I don't believe we paid any deposit.
So I guess who's, and I'm, you know, the phrase I like to use is who's minding the store? We need somebody to grab the reins, mind the store, and get on top of this. This thing needs to get put in place. I guess equipment put in place, and we need to get this up and running. Otherwise, we got an asset that's burning money, and we're collecting. We're not accomplishing anything, and hoping that that a vendor delivers when vendors probably getting pulled 16 different ways every 15 minutes by all their other customers. Somebody here needs to write herd on this thing, and let's get that moving. And I guess I'd still raise the question of if we don't have deposit payments and we're not committed to a purchase, then and if they can't tell you when that thing's going to land in the dock, I'd be looking elsewhere.
Yeah, this is yummy. I think those were great points. I totally agree. I'm just wondering, maybe Susan, just wanted to hear her ideas on how that could happen. Like if this gentleman could spearhead that, or who would be the person to do that?
I am sending an email, I'm typing an email as you're talking to try to find out where we are, what the contracts say, and if we've put money down, et cetera. I need to find out where we are now before I can backtrack us out of this.
Is your meeting in this building?
Yeah, it's just like right over there. So I don't have to try.
I think we have, I think we have enough information here. So
yeah,
let's go back to the motion. I think the motion is two pieces. One is to establish for the committee to approve, and we'll take this to the board. I'll read this. Recommended full board empowering staff in consultation with the board. It's critical to set fees for the incubator kitchens at rates in consideration of all factors, management, operations, and utilization that will provide for full cost recovery, and to review and adjust those rates from time to time as is deemed necessary to maintain full cost recovery, with such review to be completed no less than annually. So I think all we're doing here is approving the method, being the full cost recovery method. And then are we doing a second? I guess we're doing a second motion on the other piece. So I think this entails we're just approving a method here. We're not approving those rates that were presented.
I have a question.
Yes.
Just on full cost, is that all the way back to construction cost of the building?
That's yet to be determined. That's why there are two different issues here. One is what that full cost means.
Okay, good.
And I think that's a board. I think that's a board decision that has to get made. But this is to get the method and get that piece done. Jim, do you have?
No, I don't. I think that's accurate. I don't think, from the attorney's standpoint, I think there was, like, his suggestion was the staff would still consult with the board, but there probably wouldn't be another board action to approve that cost. To approve an amount.
Correct. Yes.
Right.
But at least to
yes.
bring it back. For
So I'm sorry.
Bring it back for discussion to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes. That was my understanding.
Yes. Okay. So that's the motion. Can I make that motion?
Yeah, no, we need a second. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, as long as you get a second.
Okay.
Yeah, second.
All right.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Michelle or Yummy?
No, I'm good.
Okay, then I'll ask for all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, that's everybody. All right, that includes me. Aye. Okay, the second piece is on just the software. This includes the Stripe account, which is technically a bank account. And that is something that Quan has to establish controls around. But this is the motion to actually set up that account with this software. And this is an online system, correct?
Yes,
This is basically, we're software as a service.
yes.
Okay. And with that comes Stripe is it already integrated into that?
So, and I want to make sure, stop me if I'm not answering the right question, but so the Stripe would be the payment gateway. So that's actually the secure system that is processing the payments, that the food corridor as the customer management tool, as that software is controlling.
Okay, so these are really two separate channels. One is the coordinate scheduling software, the other one is payment, and those have to be synced up.
Exactly.
Under Quan's area, correct? Okay, so this is a two-part motion approval to recommend the use of the actually, I think that motion needs to be recommendation to utilize the, what'd you call that software?
Stripe.
No,
Oh,
The food corridor.
the food corridor software in court and a separate Stripe account as the two operating, what I'll call the operating systems for the culinary center. That makes sense? Do I have to write that down?
Or if you can say it a little more.
say it again, so she's.
So the motion is to approve the food corridor as the scheduling and coordination software.
The food corridor.
Yes.
The food corridor, actually those capitalized, right?
Yep.
Okay. And also approve a Stripe account, which is a bank account, as the collection mechanism for the usage. That's the motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a second. Michelle, and you have any further discussion?
No.
No, ask for, all in favor, say aye.
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 And aye, that's 5 to everybody. Okay, all right. Thank you,
Awesome.
Xander.
Thank you so much for the great questions and taking the time. I apologize, I gotta get scooting, but have a great one, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Visitor comments that,
Hi, I'm Dan Purdom, I'm from Liberty, Missouri. I would just offer this comment. I mean, having heard that we knew the cash flow issue and the capital fund we knew about that last spring, knowing where we are with a shortfall. And I have some experience with boards, and I actually had the privilege of serving on the Greater Kansas City Healthcare Foundation board, now Health Board. So I know a little bit about budgets and so forth. To have all of this, your building maintenance funds out there unclear, your this cash flow issue within the capital plan and the capital program, and for this committee to push forward for the levy reduction and now the budget reduction, that's not. I understand you said for the capital fund, it is what it is. Well, what it is incompetent. I mean, that is stunningly incompetent for a board to function in that way. That is a level of fiscal responsibility that I have never seen before. I'm just stunned, absolutely stunned. That's my only comment for today.
Okay. Is there any other business? Jill, do you have any, Susan?
I don't. Bob's got his hand up over here.
Oh, yes.
Just from a comment you made, it dawned on me that, does this board have parliament procedure guidelines or the process that we use?
Typically, Roger's role board.
The bylaws were changed about 2 years ago. That says we generally follow them. My preference is to have more of an organized conversational approach. And as long as as long as we identify the person who's speaking and we say on a topic that's germane to the agenda, and especially not talking across each other, that's fine with me. Now, the times we will absolutely adhere to the Robert's Rules of Orders are the presentation of a motion, the motion being seconded in discussion, and then an identified vote by trustee. Because that is required for the record.
The only reason I ask is, for example, Gordon said, can he make the motion? And, some parliamentary procedure rules say the committee chair cannot. I think the committee chair should be allowed to, since you're part of the body. So I just didn't, that's why I didn't, I'm not a fan of Robert's Rules of Order. I'm gonna tell you that as we get started.
The time I've been on the board, we've never adhered to Robert's Order, never once.
I think the same way at the city council I was on, we had that and rarely really get back to it. But
yeah, for example, yeah.
Well, I just for example, in a committee meeting, can the chair offer an amendment or a motion? I think properly so. I didn't know if there was any discussion anywhere within our bylaws.
The bylaws simply state that we will generally adhere to them.
I'm sure I'll question some of that as we go along, because you can read through the 50th page and the 150th page, and Robert's Rules of Order will turn that around. So it'll be fun, but we rarely use it probably.
Not once has anybody physically stood up and asked to be recognized and say, I rise to address what, that's in the Robert's Rules, which we don't do.
It's a long document to read. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other business, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion in a second.
So
I need a second.
Second.
You can pick wherever you want. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Jill?
Said aye. Bye.
All right, thank you.